Welcome to The Crucible, Conversations for the Curious. I'm Hamish, your host. In each episode, you'll hear from everyday people who've been through profound, life-altering experiences, from life-threatening illnesses or accidents, deep existential crisis, addiction, or having to make life choices that have ultimately brought them peace, connection, and purpose. They've all stared into the abyss, walked through the fire of their own personal dark nights of the soul, and emerged from the other side transformed. This podcast is for anyone going through an awakening, a time of massive change, or questioning the meaning of life. You are not alone. You can get through this. I promise you, life is more meaningful and beautiful on the other side. Today we are talking with Rory. Rory's kindly come to join us and share his awakening and the journey of his life and what he's doing. So hi Rory, thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi Hamish, thank you very much for inviting me, and I'm really pleased to be here because I love this topic of this feeling of sense of awakenings. I like that what you brought to that, bring to this, because it's very much something that we don't necessarily think of at the time around things that have kind of happening to us or happened to us, or these words we use for our life experiences, and often just caught up in the moment, whether it's a good moment or a bad moment or a difficult moment, and then there's that reflective going, or what happened there, or and it's the idea I like that idea of exploring it from a point of view of what can we learn, I guess, if that's
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, let's start off. What is your awakening? What happened in your life that made you change, either have to change or realize something needed to be different in your life? Tell me about that process where things required you to change.
Wow. Yes. So around my early 20s, in fact, it was going into my 20s, I was at a phase in my life where I felt like just before this point that happened for me, I felt like, wow, I'm I'm experiencing an awakening. I thought I was experiencing an awakening in a positive way, because I'd come out of school, I'd come out of understanding my what I perceived myself to be, learning through school, and receiving results and going, oh, I'm more of an artist, I'm more of a creative kind of person. Did have resentment for the way the grades at school said that, this is a particular type of intelligence, and this is the only type of intelligence, and this is what you get to understand about the world, and this is the focus. This is what all of life all of life's learnings are all about, is how you can prove yourself in a particular way. And that was that I couldn't show up in an exam and recall that quickly, and I've just was left feeling misunderstood around that process of, not that I didn't really care as such. I didn't care that in a conscious way that mattered. I just thought, oh, what I didn't realize was I was choosing for it to teach me that that's the way I was, that I was not like that, and I was more of a I'd say misfit, but someone that didn't really fit into what society perceived as intelligent or normally communicative. I didn't believe I was a communicator. I didn't believe I was like assertive in that way, in verbal communication, in processing information. And I just leaned into music. I just had a love of music. So I started to learn guitar, and I just found a joy in playing guitar over and over again, and over and over and over again, playing it every day, just because I just wanted to play guitar, and I saw myself wanting to be the best I could be at guitar,
Mhm.
because So that's what I did. And I went over and over and over again, got fanatical with it. And then I got got into bands and out of bands, and didn't know how to communicate my ideas as such, but I just went along with it and was creative in bands. And then they sort of split up. And then I kind of got into dance music and self-expression through dance. And I didn't know what that was all about, other than just I loved doing it. So I just went and did it. Um, then it came to a head because there was a lot of sucked into kind of recreational drug use as well alongside it. I didn't feel addicted to it, but at the same time it was there, and it sort of enhanced situations. But what I didn't realize it was doing was changing my brain chemicals and getting me used to that being the normal way to enjoy myself. And so that in itself also led me to a crux in my life where as a breakup, I didn't know how to explain my emotions, and I didn't know how to communicate, or I did automatically forgive. I was a natural sage sort of personality that could just go away and just be enjoying myself playing music. But I didn't know how to. I just forgave the situation for what it was, but I didn't really realize I wasn't forgiving myself at all. And I just thought I was broken because and I didn't know how to explain it, and I didn't know that was the how to explaining it was one of the keys in which was keeping it there or making it worse. So I went into a period of psychosis at that point. So going from this phase of wow, the world is opening up, and the world is possibilities, and learning about spirituality, and going, I could focus on things and manifest things or meet people, and I'm so excited about the rest of my life and what could be possible, to hitting rock bottom and thinking that I was broken, and I had a thread that I was going to be okay, because it wasn't. It was kind of almost felt like it was forced in some way. It wasn't like I was meant to become mentally ill as such. I just felt like at that point I didn't know how to get out of it, and it was I knew that it was possibly possible to get out of, but I couldn't. I just thought it was going around in a loop, and I was just, is this just now the rest of? Is this my life now? Have I broken my mind and my emotions? And so therefore, that's where I went through a positive awakening of like, wow, what's going to be amazing? What's possible too? I feel like I'm broken and I don't know what to do. So then luckily my mother was very good at studying natural medicines and things like that. So she had learnt reflexology at that point. And so I had 14 weeks of reflexology, and within a period of a moment where there was about a period of about a week where I didn't sleep and my eye was flickering, and I was zoning in and out of trying to sleep here and there, but not really falling asleep. And that was the pinnacle moment where I didn't know what was going to happen. And then I was offered this treatment and went for it, started to relax, I got worse before I got better in the first few weeks, but then started to level out and started to relax. My nervous system started to regulate, and therefore within 14 weeks I was back to smiling and happy again, and wondering whether that was what was going to happen, and just had more like this idea. I never got diagnosed with the psychosis, I never got diagnosed with PTSD, but I can certainly say that I feel like, from feedback from others and talking to others, and just studying health ever since then, that was the trigger to be an awakening into wanting to understand the mind, the body, and health in general, to see what else is possible to change. And that's what I love about that phrase, is what else is possible to change. And that's been my life ever since. So I would say that that's the most deep awakening that I've had ever since.
That's That's quite incredible. So it began from not fitting that normal in school where it's all about IQ, that is your intelligence, and obviously that then, for want of a better description, that broke you, and then it was just a case of just sort of going around wondering what to do, and making sense of things slowly. But tell me bit more about your mum and that, and what she was doing with you, the reflexology, the all that kind of thing, because that obviously is where you learn to listen to your body and understand and things like that.
Yes. Yeah. So at that point I didn't know what it was going to be like. Just knew that it was some kind of physical relaxing treatment and it was, she practiced running through the sequence. She just learnt it, so it was a good way for her to practice it every week doing
Mm-hmm.
it. Within the 14 weeks, I really just started to sleep. It was like I was like instantly asleep by
Mm-hmm.
by by the first sort of 5 minutes of the treatment. Each time at that point, when I got into being able to just let go, I
Mm-hmm.
was able to let go and just know that I was safe, I guess. And that also, that feeling of unconditional love, for it
Mm-hmm.
just being there for me. I think that was another major um, awareness of this process that happened for me. So she'd also been into things like some herbal remedies and things like that in the past. We tried out homeopathy and tried out um, herbal remedies, and tried out many different things for when I was struggling with things in school. I was taken off in my, very very young. I was taken off any uh, colorings and additives, for instance, that
Mm-hmm.
would have evidence of me kind of going hyperactive afterwards. And it wasn't necessarily the sugar, but it was all the E numbers. So she was really fascinated by all of that. So I didn't have any too much processed foods. It was all natural. I was still sugar was still rife at that point through my childhood. So it was actually after I went through that, and I read a book called The Peaceful Warrior, and that book explains, it kind of throws in the idea that sugar's not useful for the body. And I was able to get. I thought, I wonder if that will help me. So I, off my own back at that point in my early 20s, getting to mid 20s, I just off my own back decided to cut out sugar
Mm-hmm.
to help with the healing process, and it really did help as well. So that was another thing that also helped me with my healing journey, as it were, coming out of that. And so I was very thankful for that process. It really helped me to go, what else is possible to change? And then I learnt, I immediately wanted to learn massage. So at the age of 24, I studied anatomy, physiology, and massage, and became started working full time doing massage. I did traditional Chinese massage, seated acupressure, Indian head massage, and I really like the chair massage when people have it in front of people. So I've always been this kind of person that likes to do things that's on the floor, on the ground level, of just showing what something new to think about or do, rather than sort of how do I put it? Sort of, going off on a tangent and only working with really specific people that have heard of this really
Mm-hmm.
specific niche thing. So I'd be
Yes.
like, oh, what can I show the general public that would be useful right now? And that would be massage. And it was in the mid early 2000s where we were just doing massage on the shop floors of Selfridges and House of Fraser and things, and airports.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And that must be really interesting, because you were just bringing that to people and just saying, look, this is, have a go at this, feel what's it like, what's it feel for you, and you're getting curious. And what were people finding when they were having these sessions done by you? What were they finding?
Um, well, it's interesting because it was designed to be accessible and with clothes on and in front of others generally, but in spaces that are quiet. People would jump in, and some would be very very much like, can you do as much as possible in 10 minutes? I'm just rushing around, and it's not necessary. It was a challenge for me to be able to go, right, how can I make the biggest difference in the shortest space of time? So I kind of like that. And that energy of just, more faster techniques, and shaking up the space and then calming it down just with a few breaths and things like that. So that's where what I loved about it.
Mm-hmm.
Some others would just be like, oh wow, I want, can I get more, 40 minutes or something like that. But yeah, generally, and yeah, working in clinics, doing more longer treatments as well at points. And but yeah, I just found that I would be really really good at sensing where there would be areas that need more work, and others to clear that tension and allow blood flow and things to flow in and out better. So once I was doing that, um, yeah, there's often people would be blown away at those points, and feeling very relaxed. However, it's very interesting that, because I still, at that point in my life, I still wasn't necessarily feeling like a communicator, as such. I was non-verbal communicator, using my hands or doing dance, and kind of encouraging people that it's okay to get up and dance, you know, on a dance floor or something like that, by just doing it myself, or without having to talk that much. So really, the words weren't coming up. So that's where I went through a physical awakening of getting RSIs from working really really hard, and repetitive strain injuries in my wrists, and I got osteopathy, had osteopathy for that, and got better again from those processes, and went, oh, that's really interesting, what's osteopathy? And I thought that would be the next level. By the time I was 32, I wanted to learn about that, because I was getting tired, and I was just going around the same loop of working really hard, but not necessarily, not knowing how to talk about what the longer game of that would be. So people would come in for like 1 or 2 sessions, feel great again, and then go away again and never call back, and I wouldn't necessarily know how to follow up or talk about it all. So or talk through what would be useful as a plan to manage the longer term. And that's really from the space of where I'd come from, with that whole thing building up, and the emotional suffering that I went through at those points, or the belief systems that I had at the time. Those are the things that create our reality, and create whether we feel fixed or stuck with a particular health thing or not, as well. So that's where I was like, I didn't realize I was fascinated in that, and I was working manually into the manual space, the physical space. However, it's become apparent I was like working more and more towards understanding how to address the mental and emotional areas, to actually really get to the point of how someone wants to manage themselves over a longer period of time, and create the habits that the new habits that they want, will actually lay down, either maintaining a better sense of health or even improving it.
That's fascinating, because it sounds to me like you are doing what happened to you. There was that disconnect, and then there was with your mum, there was that very physical, let's call it an education, which you then mimicked when you were working with people, and then it's become broader. So you've learned a skill, and then you've got very familiar and competent with it, and then you realized I need to add to it. So you've added that three-dimensional, not just massage and go, but sort of keep on going and nurturing and making a space to help people on their journey.
Yeah. So so I went through this long period of time doing the physical treatment. Then I moved into osteopathy, which was kind of working out how to help with the manual side of things, but it started to get into this whole long-term health picture thing. Even though a lot of the time when we go for osteopathy, it's like, oh, something's come up and I want to get something sorted in the moment and quickly and done again. And people don't necessarily think about going for osteopathy for longer periods to maintain a sense of maintenance or improvement on the longer term. And that's what I love about osteopathy is it's like the physical, it's the functional body, it's the holistic approach to helping the body heal itself by just being the channel to allow for what is already innate in someone that may have got stuck. And so that's the idea around that. And then the communication part, communication. So that's what I loved about it, but it also only opened up a certain level to me of understanding how to work with the physical still, the physical body. And so I came out of that and worked with that for quite a long time and loved it, and started to get a sense of how that could apply to the longer term picture. I realized I was still so much more passionate about working from the bigger vision of what health could be like, not just for a person but for the world. And that's that sense of seeing evidence of stuff that's not really working that well in the medical system, or seeing what's possible to change around that too. So I was fascinated about all that, and as we were leading out of coming out of osteopathy and working with that, I started to get a sense of, oh, how can I become a mentor in sort of moving and breathing well, so someone can go away from the treatment room with a plan to not just have physio exercises, but actually what is it that would bring osteopathic principles and holistic health principles to a management plan, to a way or to a way in which someone could go away and do it for themselves as much as they can. So I got into that. I started to write down all my ideas around that and created there was my ex-partner also developed an autoimmune condition. There was a lot of stress in her life, and she suddenly just had this flare up that happened within a matter of weeks, and it then grew and grew and grew to the point where she couldn't walk, and her whole hip and knee swelled up, and she couldn't work anymore. And then she was bedbound and in chronic pain and inflammation all around her body, and it just went woof like this because she started to rest. Right, she just actually started to stop and rest, and so that was fascinating from my perspective to go, oh, now I get to work out how to do some work in how to look at all those things that potentially help with the self-care, self-management practices to move, like qigong, yoga and dance, and but how do we modify that to someone that has really strong feelings about how they are, or how they're moving, or when they move they've got to move gently. So it's like the essence of qigong is to be gentle and to let things flow. But that wasn't it. I was like, there's something in there to add and add to. So this idea that exercise has to be pushing to the limits and all this sort of stuff, and it's like that can't be done for someone that is the chronic pain, chronic fatigue, chronic inflammation, chronic all these things that can come up for someone. So how do we apply the essence of the qigong and the yoga to a sense of a movement practice and a breathing practice that also pushes it a little bit, but not enough, not too much, So that's where I came up with something called lymphatic health exercise. And that was where I mapped that all out and started to use that for myself, my own management, also how to modify it for people that, do get achy and pains if they try to do exercise very quickly. So there's a space of getting moving. How do we make it fun and just turn it into what I loved about dancing, dancing. So there's like the best of you, taking elements of what is already known. It was nothing new about it. It's just a case of how can we apply it to a context of this modern world that is not just, qigong is, you throw words out like that to someone that doesn't understand it, it won't land as such. But going, well, hey, it's, you've got a lymphatic system, you may have heard of that, and that helps you drain your body. There might be another way in. So it's just a way of going, what is already there, what elements can we take, and what we can put together that makes it fun, and play around with it and have a go at it. So that's that modality where I was getting into mentorship, and I was like, oh, maybe I could be a coach and around this, and a mentor. But I had no idea about the life coaching and the performance coaching elements and all these other ways in which you can coach as well. And that's where I went down a rabbit hole of all of that coming out of the pandemic. So I developed the lymphatic health exercise project through the pandemic because it was an ideal space to go. I had already started thinking about it, and it was somewhere to go. Oh, if someone's isolated and can't get to the gym and they only have their body, what can we do to do it in limited space, time, budget, and capacity to exercise? So, and also potentially feeling ill as well, with all the viruses flying about and stuff. So it was that idea around. I played around with that in the pandemic. As we came out of that, I was like, okay, let me just learn to be a coach as well. I was set up as coaching business, and that's where I realized about all the other coaching modalities, and then went through all of that as well. So coaching, mental fitness training, which is all about helping to defragment the mind and also step into our human powers that are not present when we feel stressed or challenged. So it's how do we apply and bring those to the challenges. So it's all about mental fitness rather than the physical exercise fitness. So there's mental fitness coaching, somatic coaching work, which kind of is in between the physical and the mental and the emotional, which helps as well, which I got coached in myself in order to be able to start communicating better and talking my story and being here without all that self-judgment and anxiety around it. So as you can see, I'm not the same person I was. I could have been, or I was a while ago, through these practices and being coached. And finally, hardcore leadership training was the final piece on that, allowing me to step up and challenge myself even further to go, oh, what's possible? And this is what I believe is where my comfort zone is around what I can do. So I was learning that and realizing now I could just get to do little incremental pushes on that to expand and share this message further. So, and then finally, Genesis mentorship is what I'm going through right now, which is to almost like taking all of that and actually having a way to just put it into practice going forwards. So there's a lot. I said a lot there, but it's really, to boil it down, I call it mental fitness training. I call it neurocreative. We haven't even got into the idea around neurodiversity as well, and that's part of my story around not knowing I was dyslexic when I was until I was 33, studying osteopathy.
That's a fantastic story, isn't it? You've dragged yourself up by your bootstraps and gone, I can't do this, I'll try that. So you've taught yourself to a place where you're helping other people. But describe your vision, because it's helping the person, all of them, isn't it? It's the It's the mental, the spiritual, the heart, the emotion. It's everything. Describe your vision for how you work with people.
Yeah, thank you. And so the idea is, to put it simply, I like to remind people that we are all creative in our own way, and it doesn't. People consider creativity as a space of the 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 output of what I've created, and so we talk about being, I'm not a creative person because I don't know how to draw, or I don't know how to do this, or whereas if we look at it from a point of view of what thoughts we're having and beliefs we have will create whatever actions we take and whatever reality we will create going forwards, or how we react to others or our environments or challenges, all of that is an automatic pattern that's been built up. And so whether we're conscious of it or unconscious or automatic of it, we are creating that going forwards. Everything that everything that's been placed about us in our rooms, our environments, our work that we've chosen to do, it's, even if we don't feel like we have had much choice in that matter, it's been, oh, I've got to do this because of this or because of that. It's still a sense of there is a choice underneath that. And so when we realize we have that choice, our choices are creating. We are creating our choices. So within that, I like to just go, yes, we're all creative, in a sense. So if someone can be creative with how they plan their day, if they don't feel like they're creative, as in get up and sing a song or whatever, but they're much more feeling like they like to do admin and do spreadsheets and stuff like that. That's still a creativity. That's still what the output is of the creativity process. So whether you like planning or being impulsive or any of that, that's all preference for your creativity processes. So I like to call it neurocreativity rather than neurodiversity as such, because it's more of a being in action, not just being a passive observer or a passive responder to the environment. To make it to go off on tangents here, but try to come back to the idea that we can either be, I like to say, we can either be disruptive creativity. So that could be something like, oh, this is always happening to me, and I'm going to respond in the same way because I have to. And potentially that's causing, sugar addiction or an alcohol addiction or something. And that could be a disruptive creative process because it's reacting, responding. Oh, I feel bad. I feel got a hangover, and actually I'll just have a drink, and then I feel better again. But that's causing more health problems. So there's a disruptive creative process. There can also be an aimless creative process, which is, I don't know what to do today. I'm a bit bored. I'll watch Netflix, or I'll do this and I'll do that, and I just want to relax today and not feel stressed. Or I'll go and do this and see what this is like. I'll try this dance class once and get bored of it and go and do something else, and kind of just playing around with ideas or doing things to feel all right and good, but not necessarily having a vision or taking it somewhere. So then they've got functional creativity. So functional creativity is a sense of it when we're in creative flow. So it's not necessarily whether I can write a song in 5 minutes, but it's a case of when I am writing, if I suddenly feel like I'm writing a song and it's going really well and I'm in flow and I'm doing something that I know how to do, that's creative flow. If I know how to make a cup of tea really well, the way I like it, and I just go and do it, and I'm doing it and I'm enjoying it, that's creative flow. So there's a potential functional creativity process to whatever it is we do. So whatever we practice and get good at is that functional creativity. It doesn't matter what we're doing as such. It's that sense. And then there's visionary creativity, which is to either be comfortable or not comfortable, but consciously moving towards something that we really want to be making or creating. And that is a sense of neurocreativity. That's what I like to say is what we can use our nervous systems for, and use our bodies for, and use our minds and our emotions for, even if it's, I don't know how to do that, but I'm going to work towards it anyway, regardless of whether I'm judging whether I'm good at it or not as I go along. And that's the process that I really like to help people with, is those especially challenged with not feeling like they've fitted in to society, neurodiversity, neurodivergence, and all those elements to or that aren't being in their sense of flow anymore. So creative blocks for someone that that wants to get back into it, or is trying to get back into it daily, that isn't getting into it, may have a bad habit instead. I'm giving up, right, I'm going to go and drink some alcohol, or drink alcohol whilst I'm being creative, or whatever it is, and move towards this less space of disruptive into visionary. Because when we have a vision for the world, or a vision for what we want to do and bring to the world, then we'll move towards it regardless. So we get clear on that first, and that's what often we call leaders. Leaders have vision. Doesn't matter whether they have a good vision or a bad vision for the world, but they have something, that they have an agenda, and they have a way to talk about it in which inspires others to take action. And that could be for the ego, or it could be for the greater good of everyone else. And so that's what a leader, I personally think of a leader, is. So we can all be leaders. We don't have to be standing on stages to be leader. We can lead our lives in ways in which shows how humans can evolve in a better way, with a bigger vision that inspires. So, a mother of 3 can be an amazing leader that brings up their children to want to be inspired by and to others going forwards as well. So that's why I call neurocreative leadership, and that's where mental fitness training, in order to get there faster.
I love the whole idea of creativity. I remember at school being laughed at for drawing, and my art suffered, and I never thought I was creative. Yet I was a photographer for a long time. I took lots of photographs. I made people wealthy. I helped businesses. I did their marketing and stuff like that. And I didn't think I was creative. And this is going back to your school right at the beginning. I didn't fit into that mold of that, because I was something different. But I didn't think I was creative, yet I was taking photographs. And then it's only been recently I've realized that I am incredibly creative. And I love your story about the different types of creativity. I think that it's so liberating, because people don't think they're creative because the art teacher said that's rubbish, or someone said that's rubbish, and that just crucifies you. And yet we are so incredibly creative. So that story around the different types of creative, I think, is really uplifting, really, really empowering for people, especially those who are incredibly creative but have EQ or art Q, or not just your bog standard intelligence that helps you do maths or English. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's really nice to hear that you've realized that yourself as well.
Yeah, it was an interesting journey to get there, because it was just, I'm not creative, I'm stuck, I can't do this, I can't do that. But little by little, that, like you said, you start to do something, and somebody tells you something, or in your case, you're empowering people, you're helping people, and they go, well, I can't draw a straight line, but I can write a song, I can play music, I can dance, I can be creative with my movement or with my writing or as a leader or empower people. And that's all creativity, and that's just magical. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I do believe that's one of the ways in which we can tap into that, is to go, what do I want to create, and what do I want to create today?
I want to go back a little bit to the idea of the awakening. I mean, how did you experience discomfort, and how were relationships, work, and things like that? How all those impacted as you're having that dark night of the soul, as you were realizing that things weren't working for you, and you were beginning to have to change the way that you showed up in the world.
It was only that point, that week, that I said that I couldn't sleep so well. I was still going to work. I was still operating. I was operating like a zombie that had self-awareness that I was a zombie, and that I was just felt like a slave to whatever emotions were coming up, and they were constantly coming up. And I don't even know. I don't even know whether anyone could tell.
Hmm.
That's the weirdest thing. Other than my eye was flickering, but even then, I don't know whether anyone could tell. And that's what's really both interesting and slightly scary. That's what's potentially going on for so many others. As well, at that the idea that it's like, I'm getting on with it. I've got to get on with it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So yeah, I went to work. There was only that moment after that week, or during that week, where I was like, I'm not sleeping. I've got to tell someone. I couldn't, I, I couldn't, I couldn't consider or know what to do to ask for help or tell anyone else other than my mum. At that point, which I'm so glad she was there to do that. However, leading up to all of that, I was like, in some ways, I was able to sense this thoughts and go, I just had that thought. That doesn't seem right at all, or that I'm just having a feeling of like every choice that I'm making now. Before, every choice I was making was getting validation of, I'm raising consciousness, raising awareness, going to a place of everything's going to fall into place, everything's going to be amazing, getting signs from the universe, synchronicities, things that's like, oh, I just said that and that happened, or this, it's like, wow, this is going to be amazing. And then it all just flipped, wasn't like just overnight, but it somehow that event of being rejected, just, I guess I was having the same experiences, but my perception of that was that now all the things that were being validated, the things that were showing up saying you're on the right path, or that I'm on a path, here's what you thought, this is what you get, or all of that kind of coming to me, was, oh no, I'm broken, or it's not working, or I'm going down the wrong route. So the events were still the same, but my perception of what was going on meant that I just was in fear of my life. I was in fear of losing everything. I was in fear of that people hated me. That's one of the deepest, darkest ones, was that whole thing of fear of rejection, to the point of actual, not just I don't want to know you, but as in I want to make sure that you don't get back up again, kind of thing. And that really showed up for me. It's like, where's that come from? Only now have I been able to explore that, not because I didn't want to, but I just didn't know how to, or that I didn't have that reflection process in place, or the understandings that as we moved in, as human consciousness, we've all learning about what coaching is, and it's good for, what it's important for, or general therapy, or specific therapies. All of this has its place, and I think it's only just kind of stuff that we can talk about. So back then it was something that I could talk about. I felt kind of lucky that I went through it earlier, rather than maybe some people are going through it now, you know. So yeah, that's where I was at. I was just operating as best as I could, and it was only up until I went, okay, I can't do this anymore, I've got to disclose it. That was when I had to sort of like take a break and allow the healing.
You were existing and just rolling on day by day by day, and then suddenly it was like, now you have to make some choices, now you have to change. And that's when the fear comes in and squashes you. As you said, there's that rejection, there's that fear, I'm not good enough, I'm broken, which are just words that we keep ourselves small. And then the universe was saying, you have to change, you have to step out of that. As you said, there's choices. The number of choices get smaller and smaller and smaller until you're down to two choices, change or adapt or die, simplistically. But so it's uncomfortable, isn't it, to get to that stage where you're running out of choices, but you always have two.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great way you put that, actually, and I really appreciate, again, this space that you've created to be able to talk about these things, because it's not just what we experience individually, but also how we create conversations to show that it's normal and okay to talk about these things, and understand that potentially there is a process.
You've worked out a process to help people through that. I wasn't so lucky. I was unhappy, I was struggling, all my clients were useless, they weren't paying me, la 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 la, and I was drinking like a fish. And I had to come down to that point. I had to get to that rock bottom. And then there were the two choices, and I chose to get to rehab and to change my life around. And if we can help people see that they are going down that path, whatever that path is, not necessarily drink and drugs, but whatever that path is, and allow them a space to go, hey, I'm stumbling, I'm falling, I'm slipping, and help them to, give them a hand and help them up. They haven't got to hit that rock bottom. They haven't got to get to that point where some people don't make it. And I think, it's a really important conversation. It's really important to be able to say, I need help, please help me. Like you did with your mum, like I did at rehab, and like I'm assuming some of your colleagues and your clients do as well. They reach out to you because of how you share your stories and things.
Well, yeah, that's a really good point. So just to backtrack ever so slightly, I didn't realize I was dyslexic when I was 33. The results from school, in my my teens, validated some things, but then taught me to believe I was a certain way, and then I was frustrated, and then that frustration underneath wasn't necessarily the breakup that was the rejection piece. It was just waiting to bring up all of that at some point anyway. That's what I feel anyway. So it was not necessarily the specific situation, it's what's underlying. And so not knowing how to, or feeling that I knew how to communicate in a certain way, wasn't realized until it was like, oh yeah, I get to learn, a master's in osteopathy, and insist on the actual test. I had the small test, and I come up as mild, and they said, "Oh, don't worry about it, because someone that's neurotypical on a tired day can come up as mild. So we don't want to spend that extra money on or do that test as such." That wasn't what they said, but they said that we don't want to necessarily to do that test because it's not significant enough. It don't think you need the diagnosis. And I was like, I really do want to do the test. I had to insist twice. Then when I did, I came up as dyslexic, and it's because typically in the past, dyslexia is really apparent. Before, it was very apparent around a particular way in which someone processes or and as I don't like the word dysfunction as such around these ideas, because it starts to get into a place of, well, this is the way something should be, therefore if you're not doing it that way, then that's classed as wrong. Again, it's the same as, like, you know, studying a subject and then going, well, there's someone else that can show that they can do that subject in that particular way, and show their knowledge in a way in which is all what is perceived as intelligent by speaking it, because they practiced that and they know how to do that, whereas I hadn't practiced speaking or thinking in that way. What I've realized now is that I've had a much more intuitive way of feeling into things, and I feel what something will be like, and I feel an idea. I can feel into what an idea is like, not how I can put it into words, which meant that I could understand high level concepts of stuff, but frustrated that I couldn't explain that I knew anything about it. It was just so frustrating. To sit in conversation and hear people talking about stuff and going, yep, I understand that. Or some expert talking about something and going, well, that makes total sense. And I can see how if you do that with this thing, you could do it with that thing and create that thing just as easily. And but not knowing how to describe it. So with that sense, I'm much more into the idea that, neurodiverse people or neurodivergent people have felt like a certain way, and they fighting against that. They can be who they want. They're just sensitive in different ways, and so that's what I'm interested in. I'm not saying that I can help all neurodiverse people as such. It's just a case of whoever resonates with what I can do. I'm much more interested in helping those that where they're going through or gone through similar pathways to the way I've gone through. So being hypersensitive, scattered thoughts or focus, great ideas but unable to explain them, but potentially being perfectionist about it, not wanting to be criticized or judged around it until it's something that is worthwhile doing. But when you get to that point, it's always the next thing that could be better. And so it's like, actually, it doesn't have to be about actually just releasing something perfect or releasing it. It's just a case of actually getting on with it and feeling satisfied. What is satisfaction and what is success look like from not from anywhere else, but from just in here, and then working on that. So I help what I call heart-centered creative professionals, because maybe there's a lot within that. Before I was talking about neurodivergence as such, but that can sometimes be a bit of a trap to go down because it's too specific, or some may not know that they are neurodivergent, or some people may know. And actually, I feel like it's really about sensing the world and feeling into it. Some people are much more rational up here and can think in language and process in language, or some people can visualize really well. I'm not really visualizing that much. I can picture things I've already seen, but not things that I've not seen so well. So whereas you can tell that other artists can just dream up a picture in their mind and then draw it. That's why it looks so amazing. It's like, how do you? I was like, I don't know how someone can do that, because I don't visualize it. I can sense into it. I can feel into it. But then that's great because I can sense, things that other people can't sense. So it's just a case of we can all work together in some way to come up with ideas from our own ways in which we perceive and feel into things, or see into things, or think into things. So my picture is heart-centered creative, because the heart is about sensing and feeling as such, feeling into it. but not necessarily confined to that as well. So heart-centered creative professionals who are struggling with scattered focus or choosing what they really want to create, and that are potentially struggling with perfectionism to actually get what they want out in the world, whether it's for themselves or as a side project or as a next level career change. um and really the ideal person is that person that wants to get out of what they want. What they want to step into, from working potentially in a space of, I'm doing this over and over again, I feel like I'm doing it because I should be doing it. It could be working for someone else, or it could be just left to your own devices. Can be, again, something that means that we don't release that project or release that thing just for the self, or for a business. So that's the idea. And how to lead, train into mental fitness and training into how to lead that process. Pick a project to work on, and just work on something simple to start with. Work on something simple over 12 weeks, just to create a project that means something, that isn't just a case of get back into creativity process, but creative process with that visionary creativity in mind. What is important to hear, and what could make the world a not necessarily a better place, but inspire the world with that project, through a sense of the creativity process, and then committing to it and making it happen.
I love that, Rory. I think that's fantastic, because you're encouraging people to be creative and curious, and you have to be curious. And it's vision, not belief, as well, isn't it? It's not belief in right or wrong. It's a vision that I can improve, I can change, and my ideas might be able to be expanded on. So it's a positive mindset, and it's growth, but it's curious. And I think curiosity is so important, and it does mean you've got to be vulnerable. You've got to say, that didn't work. And if you're working with perfectionists, I guess that's tough for them. Yeah.
It's the perfectionists in the world get things done in outstanding ways, to the sense of that even when we get there, and we're already it's like fear of criticism, but it's actually already criticizing inside, isn't it? So that sense of, can I just put it out there the best I can, is one thing, but also, how does it represent something that the ego can let go of as well, to allow it to not be criticizing, to get out of their own ways, just go, I'm going to create this for a reason, and the reason is bigger than my inner critic, or the criticism that I could make up, or that someone else could say. I think that's the key to it, is to actually make it something so inspiring that it really doesn't matter in itself.
I think you've nailed it. It doesn't matter in itself is the one, isn't it? I mean, plenty of writers and artists have said, do it for yourself. Don't do it with an expectation. I mean, we all know expectations are disastrous. That's stacking up resentments. And I think you're spot on. It's we can create, and if we're going to do it with, I want it to be a success, I want it this. If we put limitations on it, it may well get limited. But if we're going to be broad-minded enough to say, right, I'm creating something, and off it goes, I've done the best I can, and that's going to be good enough. I think that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, definitely.
Where can people find you? Where can we find you on social media and things?
Yeah, so I go by the name of Rory Lemon Aid, AID, to help, as all one word. So I that's where I can be found on many of the social media platforms, and also my lemonaid.xyz website.
Brilliant. Cool. Thank you. And one last question. What do you think has been the most transformative gift that you have received in your awakening?
It's a wonderful question, and I think it's a sense of the two words that come up for me is appreciation. Because when I've now been able to appreciate where I've come from and where I want to go and how I want to appreciate, or what I want things to appreciate. And I like that appreciation because it's kind of like this kind of growth element to it, an idea around if someone appreciates it, then that's great, but I get to appreciate it too. And it's a sense of it. Gratitude comes from that. It's like a core piece, and it stems from that whole thing of what else is possible. To be curiosity of what else is possible. If that happened, and I can now learn and grow from it, I'm able to appreciate it. What else becomes possible through appreciation?
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much. Well, it's been super having you on the podcast. Thank you ever so much. And I will let you know when we go live. So thank you.
Thank you, Hamish, for everything you're doing with this. Because again, like I mentioned at the start, it's so important to have these conversations, and it's just goes to show that it all brings about when we listen to these things and we associate where we've been and where we've come from. It really makes a big difference to what is possible with the human race, going forwards as human consciousness is evolving.
Absolutely. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you very so much. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Crucible, Conversations for the Curious. If these powerful stories of transformation resonated with you, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this show with anyone who you think could do with a dose of inspiration for their own journey. I would really appreciate it if you could make any comments on your favorite podcast platform as well. That helps me reach more people. All the important links and information are in the show notes below. Thank you very much for listening, and catch up with you soon.